What's up, everybody? It's your girl Irene, the Passion Queen, and we are back at it with a whole nother video this week. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. We are rejoining, restarting, revisiting. There we go, revisiting. I was trying to find the right word. Revisiting the conversation around BDSM and mental health. We talked about this topic last year on the show. Um, and the video is posted if you ever want to go back to it. This time we're going to get a little bit deeper. So just grab your wine, grab your comfort pillow, your teddy bear, whatever you may need. Because this is I'm nervous just as much as you probably are as well. But let me go ahead and bring up our guest for today. So of course we have the amazing, the beautiful Samantha Odiale, my beautiful sister. And then new to the panel, we have Dr. Renee Burwell. Thank you so much for coming in. So I'm gonna let you ladies introduce yourselves, give a little bit of your background, and then I'll give the launching point, I guess you could say, for the topic today.
Dr. Barrel, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to start off just in case. We are in South Florida and we have thunderstorms happening right now. So it is a chance that I may be disconnected at some point during this call, but we're going to try to go with it as much as possible. I don't know exactly what all you want to know, but I'll just say my name is Renee Burwell. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also ASEX certified as a sex therapist supervisor, and educator and educator supervisor. So I have a lot of different things behind my name. But overall, my goal has been to help destigmatize and educate people of color, specifically Black people, when it comes to mental health and sex education, and just helping us heal through past traumas. Currently, I'm moving more into psychedelic work, but that's another piece we can talk about at some point. But I'm excited to be here. Me and Sam, we've met like a year ago, and we've been trying to catch up. So it's so nice to see you on here.
You too.
And nice to meet you too, Irene. Mm-hmm.
How would somebody, like right off the bat, how would someone, if they were interested, are you accepting clients, or is it virtual? What's that look like?
So I am accepting clients. I'm licensed in Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky. So if people want to see me virtually, they could, or they can come. I do have an office in North Miami, so people can see me in North Miami also. But if you want to work with me and you don't live in one of those states, you can come work with me as a coach. And that's a different option too for those who aren't in the states that I'm licensed in. And also my panhandle on Instagram is holistic sex therapist. Go ahead and get that started and thrown out there. It's hard for me to advertise myself, but yes, if anybody after the show is interested in getting mental health treatment or needs access to finding someone else in your area, I'm always accessible.
Yeah, and all of her information is definitely linked in the description box below. So it is easily accessible for everyone. Make sure y'all go follow her Instagram though. Let's get those numbers up for real, for real. So one of the big things that we really talked about in with the connection of BDSM and mental health in the last episode, which I feel like I wish we could have went longer. I think everybody kind of felt that way with that particular topic. But one of the biggest things, aside from the fact that, I think everybody on that particular show agreed that therapy should be something done in conjunction, especially if you're coming new into the lifestyle. Because of one of the biggest things is some people, excuse me, some people realize that some of their traumas turn into their kinks.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a lot to process. For example, for those who may not understand what I mean when I say this, um, let's say you were in a domestic violence situation and it involved a lot of like choking and things of that nature. But now, you're out of that situation and everything, but you find yourself having a kink of being choked. And it that can be a excuse me, that can be a lot to process. Trying to understand how is something that caused you trauma something that now brings you pleasure. So for a person going through that type of situation as they're learning their or finding their way through the lifestyle, how would like what would be some good pointers, I guess you could say, to help them process that information?
Okay, that's a very good start, interesting starting point. Um, so one of the things I like to say to people who might be just new into the lifestyle is it's really important to start in a space that's more public, in my opinion. I think when you're doing one-on-one in kink, sometimes you don't have the same safety precautions as going to like a play space or dungeon where you have other people that can be observers to make sure that everybody that you're playing with is safe and above board. And I think in some kink spaces that are more private, there's a lot more room for harm than when you're in more of a public space where you have other people that can kind of safeguard you. In general, I think if I'm going to be clear, I think everybody should be going to therapy, whether you're in a play space or not. You're kinky or not, because we're all playing out our traumas in different ways. It doesn't matter if you're playing it out through BDSM or you're playing it out through your relationships, your job, your family members. We're all playing it out, and we don't necessarily know all the ways we're playing it out unless we actually are trying to be a little bit more insightful about who we are and how we function in this world. So, before I would say, regardless of being kinky, we should all be going to therapy. But then as we go into therapy, hopefully you'll kind of get more access to different ways you might be playing out or seeking healing in spaces that might be optimal for you or not. But my thing is, if you're going to do it in a kink space, I just want you to be safe. And that means, like I said, doing it more in a, I would prefer people go to a public space than private spaces just because there's more safeguards. And I guess y'all could speak to that too, because I would be.
So I know for me, you're absolutely right. You touched on the healing component and the fact that therapy is in addition to everything in your life. Like I know that for me, navigating BDSM and kink, and I've been a formally trained submissive for a little over 12 years. And so I was brought into the community from a healing perspective. And there, in that, I find that, gosh, there was so much to unpack regarding traumas and stuff, but I couldn't even delve into that in the kink world until I got into therapy because it was just way too traumatic. And so when we talk about like trauma and the fact that that can be triggered by anything, before I was able to realize that I enjoyed consensual non-consent, I needed to understand and work through the trauma around rape as a child. I needed to the trauma around rape as an adult. Like I think it is doing your self-harm, and we do have to talk a lot about harm reduction in kink, but it's doing your self-harm to just hop into something because you realized a correlation, because you do need you need to unpack that in therapy, and therapy is not a destination. I feel like it's a journey. So we're not, for me, I've been in therapy for as long as I've been alive. And I feel like I'm going to continue to need to unpack things, and so that makes me a better submissive. The fact that I'm able to unpack things in therapy and then bring that voice and that consciousness to my kink. Like, when something doesn't feel right, I'm able to verbalize it instead of retreating into myself, which is what I did prior to therapy. So I'm doing myself a service, and I'm doing, I'm able to be a much better submissive because I am in therapy. Like, a dominant is not my therapist. And I think people are laying their burdens down, which rightfully so. Sometimes that feels good in kink, but you're laying an unnecessary amount of burdens down that don't belong to that dominant. That dominant is not a substitution for therapy. Like, kink is not a substitution for therapy.
And like I said, I don't want to dismiss that it definitely has its healing aspects. You know, sex is healing, play is healing. You know, the combination of play and sex, it can be a very powerful space, but it is not therapy. You know, it is not where you want to be. Um, Pulling out all of your traumas and expecting someone else to hold that for you and help you process through it. Now, being in complement with therapy, I think therapy with kink space is a beautiful thing. You know, you have more awareness, you have more space to be present in all of your activities, so that you can have more fun and you can have more pleasure. So those would be my add-ons.
It's a reclamation, I feel like, of power for me, at least. Like, where in other areas of my life I have felt powerless before therapy, I feel like in conjunction with kink and and therapy, both healing modalities, I feel like it has definitely been a reclamation of my power. So I'm able to like own it, and I'm able to walk in that power, and then realize too that again it's a journey and not a destination. So sometimes when I am in a play space, some former triggers come up. Like I have had that happen a lot, where former triggers have popped up, and I thought I talked about this. I thought that the last 3 years I've been unpacking this in therapy, but here it comes. Like here it is. Like here.
And I'm glad you're bringing that up because I mean, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people believe that there's a one size fits all, take a pill and you'll be cured of everything kind of magic potion. I'm
We
like,
could
I
all
have my
we could
magic
only
wands, you
we could
know.
only wish and hope for that. We could only
It,
wish and hope for that. It does not exist.
it is not, and the thing is part of me, I guess, through my psychedelic space, I'm realizing that is not even the purpose of life. It's to find quick fixes. It's really to kind of process through and learn and experience and grow through these trials and tribulations as well as the positives. We're not supposed to just have a one size. We're supposed to go through challenges. You know, we're supposed to grow and to be humbled and to be able to connect with other people on different levels. And I think a lot of people just want like, oh, if I'm practicing this or if I'm doing this one or two times, I'm going to be healed. And it's like, no, you're still going to have times where we all have that cross from our past that's going to pop up periodically, you know, and it's okay. But ideally, the more you do your work, the less intense that trigger will be. And the shorter the duration of the power it has over you, it will be. So, ideally, as you're going through therapy, as you're going through other healing modalities, you know, you'll start seeing things, and you'll start seeing that you're not wounding others, you know, as much. You know, you're breaking through some of those generational curses that are in your family line as you're doing more healing. So maybe you might be carrying that cross, but maybe your children, nieces, nephews, other people around you won't be carrying those same type of crosses in the same way.
Mhm.
I think a couple of things that are very, very important that you both touched on. One thing, Samantha, you said was about that in those moments you can recognize and verbalize when something is triggering you versus reverting back into yourself. And I think that's definitely one of the strongest things that you can get from going to therapy just by itself, not even necessarily, in line with kink, although it is extremely important when it comes to kink because communication is a huge foundation of kink. It's a part of what helps to keep you safe. But being able to take the time to realize, one, recognize that you are being triggered and why you're being triggered and what it traces back to is extremely important because going to what you said, Dr. Renee, it keeps you from basically hurting other people by just lashing out or reacting to whatever said trigger is. Um, so I think those are some very important things, especially when it comes to therapy in general. With the BIPOC, specifically the Black community. Because I think, like you said, a lot of people think, oh, this is just like a quick fix. You go a couple of times, everything should be Gucci. It is not that. You're going to have those days where you're like, I'm just ready to be past it.
Mhm.
I'm ready to be past whatever this thing is. And the truth of the matter is, you're gonna get past whatever this thing is, or you'll get to a good space with whatever this thing is, and being able to manage it and process it and deal with it. And you're gonna realize that there's another thing that was way behind that thing, which is why therapy is a constant thing. It's not a prescription. It's not like taking an antibiotic and then all of a sudden the sickness is gone, using that term very loosely there, you know. But so it's something that you definitely have to continue with. But I
Mhm.
think also, like how you were saying that, if someone needs help finding a specialist, a therapist, that they can reach out to you. I also think if you go to one therapist and you feel like it doesn't work, make the realization that it may be the fact that you and that therapist just did not connect, which means you have to find another therapist. It doesn't mean therapy doesn't work. It just
Mhm.
means whatever value, whatever viewpoint, whatever it is, for whatever reason, you and that particular person just did not vibe. It's the same thing like how you make friends. Sometimes you just don't vibe with people. And
Mhm.
for this, you definitely have to vibe with this person because you have to be comfortable to be more naked than the day you was born.
It's so important, especially like, I feel in the kink community, it is so important to find a therapist that is culturally competent,
Mhm.
like, that isn't going to shudder at the thought of you talking about what you unpacked during a flogging session, or what it felt like to be restrained, and what that internally, how that, what that might have brought up, because they always say like a bound body frees the soul. So when we talk about psychedelics, even, like, I'm so curious about psychedelics and my journey consciously. And my conscious journey includes my kink and spirituality. And so how that would feel like, the freeing of myself, like, with the psychedelic journey along with the kink journey, i'm I'm really curious about that, because that's a layer that I know I have been thinking about. But you're right, like a therapist, you should feel good to you, it should
Mhm.
feel in alignment with you and your values. And you know I when I met you, I was like, wow, because there were a few, mental health providers at Sex Down South,
Mhm.
and so, or Sex on the Beach, and they were all people of color, and I was like, yes, this is it. Like, we needed y'all. Like, you all are who we were waiting for, because we want to be able to, if we walk in, and you know how this will look. As we walk in as submissives, we may have had some kind of play the day before or days before, and our body has had some visible bruises, right? Like, that's just the way it is, like if you were whatever. And so for a therapist that isn't culturally competent, they could see that as like, oh, is this person getting abused at home? And now all of a sudden we're feeling shame. Like, we're like,
Hmm.
oh, let me go ahead and cover up. When in actuality, when I'm with my therapist, I should feel like I could take everything off. Like, not my clothes, but just all of the blockages, like all the
Right.
blockages and all of the outside static. I should feel like that. And so when I met you, I was like, I can't believe, because I think you were in my workshop, and I'm like, I can't believe this mental health provider is listening to this and understanding it in a way that makes us feel safe in here. And she looks like me, and all of that is important. Like, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to feel like you can take your armor off around a therapist, especially in the kink community, because there are so many layers to our thoughts and the way that we move. And sometimes black shame comes up, because it's tied to so many things. Like, in kink, a lot of stuff comes up. So to have a therapist that's you know a sex therapist, and someone that's culturally competent, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. Like, we need you, and I'm so glad that I know you. Like, I'm so glad I know
Right.
you.
Yeah, and we
Listen,
need a lot more for sure.
definitely is. I was super excited when Samantha, told me about you. And oddly enough, I had already been following you for a while. So she said your name, but then she sent me your page. I was like, oh, I've been following her. Perfect. Okay, cool. So I was already kind of, familiar with some of the things that you have been posting and whatnot. But as a person who is in therapy, who love my therapist, she's sweet as pie. But baby, she is not key confirming, so of course I can't explain these things to her. She listen, she already think I'm a little out there anyway, because she be like, Irene. I'm like, listen, hey, it's what you want me to do? This is where I'm at right now. We're trying to get past this, but this is where I am. And like I said, I love her dearly, and she's been awesome thus far. But I can 100% say as a person who is in the kink lifestyle, and I do see, understand, and value the release that can happen with kink, with flogging, with breath play, with all these different things. And it kind of, there is a bit of a disconnect where I'm like, mm, because you're gonna judge me when I tell you this, and I don't need you judging me right now. But also I think Sam is on this side. I think another thing that's super important with having someone who understands kink and the lifestyle is not only that they won't judge you, like you said, Samantha, if you do have, bruises or anything left over from a play session, but they can also talk to you so that, because there are some people who are in the lifestyle, are introduced to the lifestyle in a way that is not healthy.
Hmm.
And because majority of people look at BDSM as just abuse to some extent, they think about the whips, the chains, the this, the that. Jack Harlow had the whole song, he not in the whips and chains and everything like that. And it's like, that's not all that it is, but okay. But they can also, someone who understands the lifestyle can also help you define what that fine line is between this being something pleasurable and helpful and affirming to you, or actually going across the line to being, okay, this is more abusive than it actually is, in line with what the principles of BDSM truly are. So I think that's also another thing to kind of to take into consideration when thinking about it, as far as being in connection with the BDSM lifestyle as well.
Because some people are extreme. That's no doubt. Oh, a puppy.
I'm
Some people,
sorry because of this rain.
I,
She's like getting scared.
I feel
It's
like
fine. It's fine.
extreme end of kink. Like, it is, and it's definitely okay to be on the extreme end of kink. And some people are in the middle, and some people are not. So I think with respect to wherever you align, right? Like, it's important for you to define what is appropriate and what is not, what doesn't feel good and what doesn't. And I think your voice is your power. Like, I think sometimes a lot of submissives or S types find that they have to be super submissive, and they can't voice when something isn't, it doesn't feel right, or yes, you have a safe word, but as a black person in this black body, we're always told to keep pushing it, especially black women. Like, we could be tired as hell and we're gonna keep going. And I think for kink, it is an
People abuse that. People
like
abuse.
Hmm.
for me, kink is an act of self-love. And so because I love myself, I'm able to extend my submissive energy to a dominant worthy of that, someone that I've entrusted with that. And so it's an act of self-love. So I ain't gonna push myself past my consensual area. Like, this is what I can't. Mm-mm. And so out of fear, I used to do that. That, like you talked about, what unhealthy kink felt like. For me, I knew that I had reached my limit, but in an effort to be obedient, and in an effort to just be loved, or an effort to be appreciated more, I pushed it. and that is unhealthy behavior. And any dominant that would see that, because the dominant should be aware of all of the things about you that are no's, hard stops. I cannot. No, this isn't right. And so any dominant that sees you pushing yourself past what you have discussed at length, because you should be discussing at length prior to engaging with anybody. But,
Mhm.
anybody that is okay with that isn't a healthy person for you. So
Hmm.
I think having, you know, a culturally competent therapist can get you out of that, superwoman syndrome. Help
Mhm.
you get out of that superwoman
Sure.
syndrome.
Or a
that
lot
super
of the syndromes we have as Black people, like you said, the superwoman, the people pleasing, because a lot of us believe that we have to do everything our partners tell us to do because we don't want to be difficult, that fear of being difficult. So, and that's why I like the idea of people starting in public spaces, because a lot of times the people who are around you will let you know, like, hey, something about that's going on isn't working, or that person might not be okay. And just because someone tells you that person's not going to be okay, it's deeper than that. You actually have to figure out, why do you keep pushing your boundaries? Why is it so hard for you to say no? Why can't you say your yes, no's, maybes? Like, why are you attracting partners that even reach your yellows? You know what I'm saying? Like, your partner should never really go pushing to the red. Like, that's not okay. So, you going to a good, competent therapist in kink can help you explore, like, are you using kink in a healthy way too, in respecting your boundaries and your desires, and at least having partners who are respecting your boundaries and desires. Because to me, kink is healthier in many ways than vanilla relationships, in play, because there's so much communication at play. There's so much setting boundaries, negotiation, um, really attunement is on a higher alert in kink than you see in some of the more vanilla spaces.
Mhm.
So, if I see that people aren't really following the negotiation and communication and collaboration, I know they're most likely not in the most healthiest kink dynamic.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. And just to give some people, just in case, anyone out there is listening or watching and they're wondering, okay, so what does it mean to go into a public space? So basically, majority of major cities definitely um, have a dungeon or a play space. Majority of the time, they're going to be called dungeons. If you do a quick Google search, you typically can find somewhere to go. Now, the cool thing about majority of these places, at least in my experience, is they tend to offer classes, and the
Mm-hmm.
classes will give you very, intro information to different types of kinks, most typically the most popular types of kinks. And it's a great way to go to this space, get to know a lot of the people that work in the space to make sure that the space stays safe, as well as the opportunity to get to know a few people that may frequent said space. And sometimes after the class, they may let you go actually walk around the play space. You might have to sign like some confidentiality paperwork or something of that nature, um, or sometimes they may have you pay to do so. But it's a great way to at least see what that looks like, see what it looks like for people in play. The classes are really, really dope, at least the ones that I've experienced, because they give you a little bit of knowledge to kind of tempt you, I guess you could say, to a certain extent. But it also gives you a little bit of information to help to that piques your interest in saying either, oh, you know what, that may not be for me, or saying, you know what, I may want to learn more about this particular thing because it interests me so much. Um, but a quick Google search will definitely help you out with that. Now, one thing I will say, which I just have not found yet, outside of like going to uh, things like Exotica, or I haven't been to Sex Down South yet. I'm hoping to go this year. I'm trying to work it into the schedule. We're trying to figure it out. Or things like that is being able to be in a predominantly black space when it comes to kink. And shout out to Tyome because that's the only reason I was at Exotica and said predominantly black space when it came to kink, which was such an interesting experience in itself. Um, but yeah, so you know what? I probably need to add that information to my website. Start adding stuff like that to my website. I just thought about that.
I
But
think
it
that
is important. It's important to to learn and grow from people that look like you, because all kink is not created equal.
mhm,
And for black people and people of color, we find that we have to create seats at the table for ourselves in non black spaces. And what happens is, without knowing that we do it, we tend to code switch in those spaces, and that is a severe issue in the kink community, because there is the fetishing of our black bodies in kink spaces that are not black centered, and not queer centered, not LGBTQ plus centered. Um, I know people who are people of trans experience, and so trans men oftentimes do not have a safe space in white kink spaces that are, heterosaturated and white heterosaturated. So, they end up getting misgendered, and it's just a lot going on. And so when there is opportunity to learn in non white saturated kink spaces, we should absolutely take advantage of, the Sex Down South. What Marla is doing and Tia are doing is revolutionary.
mhm,
And they don't just do it in Atlanta. Like they did a pop-up in Miami, sex
mhm,
on the they're doing sex on the lean in another area. So,
mhm,
it's important to follow them, because they literally bring a whole new awareness for people of color and queer people. And so people that normally would have to code switch and feel unseen and in white hetero saturated kink spaces, they really do a good job. Also, Black Queer Dom Society. The work that the Black Queer Dom Society, they're submissives and doms, they're doing the work. They have spaces that are for queer people that are into kink, taught by queer people that are people of color. There's just so many, and I can list some resources after this is over. But it is important, just as important as it is for you to be seen by a therapist who sees you and understands the many layers and intricacies of being black and kinky, being
mhm,
black, period. Equally important to learn in black spaces from black people.
Right.
mhm, mhm,
And also, let me make sure I say what's up. I see we got four current viewers. Angelina, Lily made a good comment earlier. She was saying that she's been triggered in play before, and she's been working, or they've been working, because I don't know what your pronouns are. Been working through them through therapy. So I think that's really dope.
mhm,
Um, that you have a space to be able to work through it, um, and that you were able to identify it. So definitely very proud of you for that. But yeah, so I think like you said, Samantha, I think it's very important, and probably one of the most beneficial things that I personally have found with social media is being able to be connected to people like Samantha, like Tayomi, um, and I follow Sex Down South, and like all these beautiful people who are a part of this lifestyle, who look like me, who understand the questions that I had when it came to the lifestyle. Because in all of my okay, so Dr. Renee, this is you're starting. You forgot to tell me. I did a lot of research. Like I still have my binder of stuff. And when I say a binder, it's like it's the big 2-inch binder, and it's a bunch of different information. And I was reading through a lot of the information, and I was like, mm-mm, mm-mm, absolutely not. That does not. No, that my black self is not doing. This doesn't make sense to me. Just because some of the stuff you go through, and it's like, are you really letting someone do this to you? And then you start connecting it to the things of our ancestors in the past, and all of this kind of stuff, and all the things you heard that you wouldn't do, you shouldn't do, and all of this, and being able to find people who look like me, and understand why I'm asking the questions I ask when it comes to different kinks and fetishes and all that kind of stuff, so that I can have an honest conversation about, okay, I'm interested in impact play, but I need to know, like, what are all the different ways that you can partake in impact play, because a lot of people go straight to like whips and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know that it could just be spanking with your hand. It could, or for some people that still may be triggering depending on how you were disciplined as a child, or flogging and all these other different ways that give different sensations. It won't be as, I don't know if harsh is necessarily the word that I want, but that's kind of the only word I can think of at the moment. Um, because it looks different for us. It just, there's so many other things culturally that play a part when you're partaking in different kinks and different ways to practice any specific kink.
Mhm.
Um, so I know social media has been my best friend when it comes to that, and I have loved the circle of people that I have been able to build around me, because I'm able to do things like this, be introduced to you, Dr. Renee, and learning how therapy, kink, and all of that can work with each other.
Mhm.
So.
Hmm. Yep. Don't let anybody colonize your kink. That's like one of my takeaways, because that I've seen it happen a lot. And so walking in as an empowered, um, you know, black person when I do go to Exotica, which by the way, Exotica Miami is happening this weekend, and myself and a few submissives that are black are going to be showing up and walking around and talking to people and stuff and networking. But um, I think
I'll be
it
in Vermont, but I'm sending y'all love.
you know
Yeah, I'm at another conference.
Oh my God. I think that's so important, and I really feel like us showing up in these spaces, I think, it for us, it's like we chuckle at it, and we're like, we want to be seen, and we want an opportunity for other people to feel seen when they see us. So we're gonna be showing up in our collars and our leashes, and all of the things that we do, just because when you feel seen, you don't feel like you got a code switch in these spaces. And I'm not saying don't go to these, you know n- you know these events, because they do open your eyes, and you can meet people that are not um this disrespectful fetishizing, and some black people like the fetishizing, so I'm not yucking
Mhm.
anybody's yum. But you do get to meet different people, and so it's important to do that. But the code switch is real, and we're often told not to be too loud, in regular spaces, or we
Mhm.
showing up too loud, we doing too much, we're too extra, we're too this, we're too that, and we're not submissive enough, and all this. And so it feels good to be seen and see people that look like you in these spaces that are not predominantly black. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question about psychedelics. Do you mind, because it
I don't mind, but I am kind of thinking about the black space and kink a lot more, as you're talking about it, because we are just BIPOC spaces, but I'm speaking black specific because there's so much anti-blackness out
Mhm.
here, regardless of BIPOC. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
it is unfortunate that we don't have more spaces created just for us, and I just want to affirm, like, knowing, going to these exotica places and going to some of the white dominant spaces can, if you find people that look like you, hold on to them. You know what I mean? Network, try to build community no matter where you're at, because we do need each other. We do need to have more black affirming kink professionals or kink practitioners, whether you're professional or if you are just a practitioner, letting people know, like, this is okay, this is not, helping people understand, like, there are a lot of people who want to be abusive or want to use some of the tropes that are out here about us being difficult to try to manipulate and say, oh, you need to be more submissive. You saying no is not okay. that's you being a Black woman. That's not you being a good submissive. That's why we want to go A, B, C, D. And those other women will say no. They get more power to say no than we do because they're
Mhm.
manipulating and abusing in
Mhm.
certain ways. So I just kind of went in a lot of different directions right
No,
there.
that no, it
But
was great.
That's all
That
right.
was good.
you know, I wish we had more spaces to play and to be free that are created for us alone. But I will say that in some dungeons, they do have BIPOC days. So even if you know that the dungeon is or play space is mostly dominated by white, because that is just where we're at in this culture, um, you can still see if they might have something specific to BIPOC. So just saying, don't limit yourself and make sure you ask and make sure you try to find ways to find peace in in this community is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. And
And
the
the
code
sex
switching is real.
Yes, and the Sexperts Corner at Exotica is almost always all black. Tayomi sets it up like that. Like the Sexperts Corner has, and she definitely makes sure that she says this is the blackest area. That's the marketing. This is the blackest area of Exotica is the Sexperts Corner. So, you will see your black porn stars, you'll see your black professional doms like Daddy Hef, a lot of folks are familiar with Daddy Hef. You'll see a lot of, kinksters. I had met a black kink house at Exotica in the VIP section. They came and they were
Mhm.
present. And so, that gave me an opportunity to network with them and talk about Black BDSM and kink. And they were like, how could we get you to talk over here in our state? They weren't even in Florida. They weren't based in Florida. So, you are absolutely right. When you see us, do not be afraid to walk up to us in these spaces because 9 times out of 10, we're there looking for you. Like we're
Mhm.
looking for you. Like we're looking and we're gonna smile and we're gonna walk up to you. I know Saturday or Friday is a women's only. The women get in free at Exotica, and so that's where I rallied a bunch of black submissives, black doms or dames, to come and join us so that we can show up and
And
be.
I'm jealous. Mhm.
Well, maybe you can meet us in DC. My plan is to be in DC. Jesus.
And DC
When
tends to be a really black
Hmm.
saturated Exotica, like the
okay.
DC,
Yeah, and
very
I
much.
think it's like the first weekend in December. I think.
Hmm.
I think it's their
It
first
is.
weekend in December.
Mhm.
So, but okay. So, are you ready to talk about the psychedelics? Because
What questions y'all have?
so, in my experience, so the first person that I actually practiced kink with, their preference was, like, I only do like weed or whatever the case may be. They were like, yeah, I prefer if you didn't. I prefer if you were a lot more sound mind.
Hmm.
So no weed, no alcohol, which is totally fine. I'm able to get in the proper mindset without those. But I do feel like they heighten it. Like they just, I don't know, they take it to a different level. So I guess one of my biggest questions is, what would be your suggestion around utilizing different psychedelics, or things to kind of that inebriate you or alter your current state of mind, when it comes to kink specifically, but also dealing with just trauma in general.
Okay. I'm like looking at the time. What I'll say is, um, I'm I'm not against people using substances to enhance their experiences, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's alcohol or whatever mind altering substances they might use. Um, I think you definitely have to be very harm reductionist when you're doing that. You have to know who you're around. You have to know yourself. You have to know the medicines you're playing with also, and you have to know how they function with your body. You have to know, in my opinion, personally, I want people to know their themselves sober before you do anything. You know, if you're going to be doing kink, you need to know you need to know all of your boundaries, all of your yays and nays, because the reality is, you know, when you're in sex, brain in and of itself can make you cross boundaries, you know, for yourself and for others. So you got to be cautious of that. Then you're adding a substance on top of that that can push your sex brain and then your natural consciousness to different space. So even when we're talking about, so I'm you asked a lot of questions, so I'm trying to make sure I'm answering all. So even with that, you have to think about your dosing. Like if you're going to use a substance, a microdose is a very different experience than a hero's journey. You know what I'm saying? So a little microdose of marijuana or a microdose of psilocybin or MDMA or something like that. And you have to be careful with all of these things because now so much is laced with fentanyl. You know, so you want to make sure you're testing your whatever you're trying to consume. So this is outside. What I'm talking about right now is just recreational usage. Um, so you have to just be mindful of that. So like maybe doing a little microdose might be something that stirs things up for you, but doing a full hero's journey, I would never recommend that in a kink space. You know, that's you're too unconscious. That's not I you know, I'll just, or a sexual space. I'm just gonna say that too. A hero's journey probably just isn't good when you're already in a dissociative state, just having sex. So that's some things to think about. Also, for people who are penis owners, psychedelics don't really work well with penises sometimes. You know, not all the time. Some people can, you know, everybody got different situations, but that's something to kind of keep in mind is like, are you trying to have a sensual experience where there may not be penis functioning, which can be very erotic and arousing, or are you trying, or is an erection extremely important? You might not want to use a substance in addition to having an erection. So that's something to consider too. Um, when I look at psychedelics for sex from a therapeutic space, I'm hoping that people will get past their traumas. So, or their blockages, maybe not traumas, but what trauma, when I say trauma, let me define that. That's a wound that someone has. So it can be something small, like your mom always cleaning up behind you and say, you know, so then you have this image like, I can never do anything right, you know, because my mother always cleaned up behind me. I was never able to do that. So we got these little messages that come in that are not intentional, that are traumas, but they're wounds. And that causes blockages. Then you got the big T traumas, which are, you know, you almost died or something to that effect, or experience a near death experience or something that made you feel so unsafe that's destabilizing. Um, so what the psychedelics, the way that I use them for, or I don't want to say use them, but as a clinician, we take people on a high dosage so that they can kind of tap into their unconsciousness and bring whatever is in the back of the brain to the front so that it's not controlling them and it's not triggering them and they have more control in their present moment. So ideally, the more you work on what's going on in the back, the more present you can be in your sexual and kink spaces. So what I'm trying to say is I use psychedelics not necessarily for you to have sex with it, but to complement so that you can be present when you do have sex and you can be more whole and more alive because you've worked out all of your traumas and your blockages. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense for me. And, you know,
Definitely.
the reason why I wanted you to talk about it is because, so just being transparent, I've been on an SSRI for some time, you know, like, you know, just because of my depression and anxiety and things of that nature. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 4 years ago and lost my breast. So the near death experience is always very real to me, even as I navigate healing cancer and survivorship. I still am very much, you know, I have this depression and anxiety that's a part of every day. And so I want to be as present as I possibly can And so sometimes the medicine that I take makes me feel like I'm not present. And so my guard is, I wouldn't even say my guard is up. I just feel, my therapist said to me once, like, oh, well, this medicine is going to make you feel like everybody's in the ocean drowning and you're just sitting on the edge, just like, oh, drown. That sucks. Like, that's terrible, but I'm not going to lose control like I would normally. Like, oh my God, everybody's drowning. I'm going to drown. I'm drowning in the inside. I'm not able to process in my physical body, and I'm very spiritual. So, when I received downloads, I just felt like I was losing my mind and I wasn't really having these spiritual experiences, which I know that I'm able to do, but anxiety and depression are liars, So I just really think that there's something in psychedelics that could put me, you know, bring everything, like you said, to the front without this, like, like I really sometimes feel disconnected. I feel
Mhm.
disconnected and I'm not able to, on the medicine that, is that they have, like the SSRI and the other medicines for the anxiety and depression that I've navigated over the years. I feel like I'm not present. I feel like I'm not able to, let down like this thing, and I hate that. Like, even when I'm with clients, when I'm doing spiritual work, it's important for me to be able to receive, and I don't feel like I'm able to receive. I feel like there's all these different blockages trying to protect me from what I really need to do, is just be able to feel and safely, and like I want to be able to navigate freely and float with that. And I feel like I need that floaty feeling because it makes me feel more human. It makes me feel a little superhuman, which is also good for me. I like the little superhuman aspect of what it feels like to just, that's what kink does for me. It gives me that euphoric feeling, that subspace that feels almost like an altered state of consciousness,
Mhm.
where I'm still
Not
aware.
almost. It is a altered state.
Yes, like I'm still aware. I'm very much aware, but I'm aware with a different level of consciousness. And I'm able to let go of, I have severe claustrophobia, but you wouldn't be able to tell that when I'm in a scene with someone that I trust and I'm able to be in that subspace, that altered state of consciousness. It's like, what claustrophobia? Like,
Mhm.
what claustrophobia is there? Like, I don't have it. And why do I even feel it when I'm not in subspace? Why? I'm not afraid of it now. Like,
Mhm.
what's going on?
And then ideally, if you are doing good integration, that means you're doing like therapy after a psychedelic experience or even that subspace. You can explore it in a deeper way so that you can figure out what keeps you from accessing it in different spaces.
Sheesh, that's great. Does your practice accept insurance or is it private? Like, how do we? Because
Yeah, I'm private pay
good.
or
That's
yeah, just because and it's not and I just want to be clear with people because I know a lot of people have issues because a lot of good black therapists are private pay. Insurance caps people, and um it's so political. Even I'm trying to be cautious in how I say it, and it's just kind of like therapists have to do good self care, and you can't do good self care if you have a company capping you. So it's nice to be able to take some. I believe in taking at least one or two, or like figuring, or like doing something like Alma or Headspace, and you kind of cap the amount of people you have, just for access points or having a sliding scale. But I just want to let people know, like, insurance is complicated for therapists, um, when it comes to like getting training and when it comes to your own personal growth and development. You don't want to be in systems that are capping you and aren't taking care of you.
yeah,
And I just want to make that clear as to why you see so many people doing it and not look at it like, oh, these people are selling out or doing that. It's more so like people got to love themselves too and take care of themselves as they're taking care of others.
absolutely. Healers need healers.
Mhm.
So, and I agree with that. My therapist is private pay. and they black. And I'm looking for another one only because they are no longer going to be doing the work. So I'm coming to you because
Listen, I may need to slide over there and holler at you myself. 'Cause Jesus, love her down. But there's some conversations that are just not going to be had, and I think that's something that is important for people to understand that there may be times where you've been going to a therapist for a while, but you've reached a empath where maybe you need to find somebody else that can help you through whatever this next level is. And there's nothing wrong with that. You shouldn't feel guilty about it or anything of that nature. Sometimes you just have to switch things up. Now, with that being said, Dr. Renee, I definitely would love to have you back on. I think there are a lot of other topics that we definitely can touch on. Um, and this topic could probably go even further. Um, so I definitely would love to have you back on, but just so we can go ahead and be respectful of people's times, because I love when my people are in here, but I try to be respectful of their time. Um, if you could go ahead and just tell everybody where they can find you, and any other pertinent information that you would love for them to know, this is your time to do so.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, my website, I have two. One is reneeburwell.com. That one kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of who I am and how I present in the world. Is the best way of putting it. Then my practice website is pandorasawakening.com. And that's where you kind of see everything about me, more about my strategies for therapy, and just different resources and tools are on that website. So pandorasawakening.com, and then reneeburwell.com. And like I said, on Instagram, I have my hand handle is Pandora's underscore awakening for my practice. And then my, not my personal, but my professional is holistic sex therapist.
perfect. And you can find me on Instagram at Samantha Odoyale, Odoyale. And Linktree is also Samantha Odoyale. And you'll be able to see like upcoming workshops that I will be a part of and hosting. I'm going to be doing a wine and rope event in Hollywood, Florida coming up. And it's at a Black owned winery. And so I am so excited about that. And so more information to follow. It's going to be at English Brown Winery. I just want to plug my friend who will also be joining me at Exotica this weekend.
Nice. And of course, y'all know y'all can find me across all social media as Irene the Passion Queen. Make sure you guys are tuning in. Actually, make sure you guys go to Eventbrite and look for Primal Poetry. If you see my link tree, which should be in the description box, or if you go to any of my social media accounts, my link tree is there. There's a link directly to the Eventbrite. We have our open mic poetry session this Saturday at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm telling y'all want to get your tickets. If you're not a poet, it is $10 to attend, $5 to perform. You want to make sure you're there because I will be premiering the audio version of everybody's poem, like everybody's favorite poem for me, Penis Worshiper. And boy, when I tell y'all want to hear this, I blush. It makes me blush to listen to it. Okay, and y'all know I don't blush easily, but it makes me blush. And then of course you want to make sure you're there because we have a lot of amazing poets that come through for the show. Also, start getting yourself together, get prepared because October is around the corner, and that will be our 50 Shades of Seduction in person and virtual event. But y'all want to be there in person because see what y'all couldn't see, the way I had to she on this side, the way I got to walk this beautiful woman out on a leash last year. Listen, I learned I like something that I didn't even know I had liked, and I was like, all right now, we about to go down the road here. But y'all want to make sure y'all are there in person. We have some amazing poets that night, and then of course we're going to have an amazing session of BDSM education by the beautiful Samantha Odayale, aka Miss Kitty if you're nasty, as I like to say. Uh, But also make sure you're hitting on my website, ordering your books. We got Vacation, the Purple Dungeon, as well as the Sexual Awakening Journal, which Dr. Renee, I need to send you a copy because I would love your opinion. Because one of the first things I say in the book, I am not a therapist. This is not therapy. These are just, as a sexual health expert for the past 14 years, these are basically just questions that I've, one, asked myself, as well as questions that I've worked through with some of my clients to help them find some things that they like, may not like, and figure out why they have just some blockages or, adverse reactions to certain things off rip. I definitely say that this is something that you possibly can take to therapy with you versus, trying to use it as a therapy, as straight therapy. But y'all make sure y'all check all that out. Make sure y'all following everybody up here. And until next time, be safe, have fun, live life. I'll talk to y'all later.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you for being here.